Welcome to the Cracking the Growth Code podcast, where we explore practical growth and leadership insights to take you and your organization to the next level. I'm your host, Matt Zembruski. I'm pleased to have as my guest today, Liliya Lund, who's the head of transformational culture and change with a lot of great Agile experience. And Liliya, I'm excited to welcome you to the show and to start to pick your brain for our audience here. Thank you for being here.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me here, Matt.
And I'm excited to jump right into it, but let's just get started since our audience may not know you as well as other people. Can you introduce your role in the company now and to our listeners, and sort of like your role in your career? I know you've done a lot of cool stuff, and just let them know what you're up to, what you're passionate about. Like, what do you think about when you're coming to the office to affect change in an organization?
Absolutely. So I have a bit of an unconventional career path from maybe some of the guests on your show. And that is that I started my life as a PhD chemist. So I have a doctorate in chemistry. And for the first 7 years of my career, I catalyzed a lot of change in the Petri dish. So I used to work for the pulp and paper industry, and I used to remove bacteria from the paper making process. I know, highly riveting stuff. It was so riveting that, after 7 years of doing that, I decided I needed a change and I needed a larger Petri dish. And here's where the agile transformation and the change management piece came in. And I pivoted into the tech space, and I worked as an internal consultant within Salesforce for a few years, helping Salesforce customers transform their organizations to be more agile, which led me further into the Agile space, where I was an enterprise Agile coach at Cisco, which ultimately landed me at VMware, leading the culture and their SaaS transformation change management effort across that organization. So it's been a very interesting career, starting really small on the molecular level and then moving all the way up to the organization and people space with the change catalysis.
That's fantastic. And it actually, it's weird. Maybe it doesn't make sense to other people, but it makes a lot of sense to me, because when I think of lean and leaning out the waste in organizations, you were doing that with paper. You were taking bacteria. How can I get all the stuff out that I don't need that makes it not what we want? And you're just doing that now with people and process.
Exactly. Well, and the other learning that I had working in the R&D space was that it is so critical to collaborate with your customers, and not just collaborate, actually know your customer, have empathy talk to your customer, right? It's such a simple concept, but if you talk to people that sit behind a lab bench or that sit, behind a keyboard all day, and you ask them, who is your customer? They have no idea. Or what does your customer do with your product? They have no idea. And I was one of those people. I had no idea what my customers did with all this amazing stuff that I developed in the lab. So I quickly realized that if you don't talk to customers, it could take 3 years to commercialize this brilliant idea that you have. And if you talk to customers and you collaborate on the solution, you realize value so much faster, right? That was a huge learning. It took me 7 years to get there, but it was a huge learning that I walked away from that industry with.
Well, that's so important. That's one of the things I'm very passionate about too, Liliya, is when it comes to teams or organizations trying to deliver value to customers and stakeholders. There's just a lot of lack of communication there that's just built into these companies, especially once it's a medium or a large size organization. They tend to drift away from the customers that they're delivering value to. Talk a little bit more about that, about how you've helped improve organizations or teams or leaders and help get them closer to the customer.
Yeah, so a lot of the work that I've done has been with helping internal IT teams understand that they also have customers, right? Sometimes in operations, people think that, oh, we don't actually touch the customer, we don't actually talk to the customer, so we don't have customers. And that is so wrong, because the end user of whatever process, policy, technology that you're implementing, even data solutions, there is an end user. That is your customer. Whether or not they're giving you money for it, that's a different thing. But there is somebody that is going to consume that which you buy or that which you build. So it's hyper important to have that feedback loop, have that conversation with the end user. So one of the things that my team at VMware did was close that feedback loop between the end users and the folks in our product and engineering organization that were building different solutions for them, right? It was before I came in, product and engineering would just come up with all of these processes, all of these tool changes, and then they would kind of punt it over the fence to change management and go send a communication and create a training deck. And they're going to go use it and it's going to be fine. We created this amazing process, right? That's not how it worked.
No.
There was a lot of really upset people within VMware that didn't understand how things fit together. They didn't understand why changes were being made. And most of the time, their work became more complicated as a result of it. So what my team did is we ended up having ongoing weekly conversations with our end users. And we would take that feedback and we would feed it directly to our product and engineering teams. And after doing that for about 6-7 months, product and engineering folks actually started listening. So not only was that feedback incorporated into the backlogs and things were reprioritized, we also changed the amount of stuff that we were pushing out every release into production, right? Change fatigue was a factor that started to play a role in decision making. Sentiment, other things that were going on within the organization that would have precluded rapid adoption of these changes were starting to be considered by product and engineering, right? It's such a simple concept. It's an agile concept, but we didn't use the word agile.
Mm-hmm.
We just closed that feedback loop and brought that empathy into the development process, which was huge.
That's brilliant. It's so beautiful. I've seen that happen in small ways and in some large ways in the industry. And I think it's beautiful as an agile professional when that happens, because you start to connect the people who are really receiving the value that the company is trying to deliver. Everybody has good intent. Everybody's trying to get the right thing done, but there's so much confusion in there. Like you said, it's very simple on the surface. Let's just talk to the people we're giving the product to, and but it doesn't, in practice, it doesn't happen as well. So that's great that you put that together for the organization.
Well, and a lot of the time, Matt, I see people doing that with, we have to be agile, so we have to talk to the customer and this whole concept of customer centricity. And we start attaching all of these buzzwords to it. And I feel like the industry is so saturated with these words and these concepts that they're almost commoditized, right? There's a bad connotation now attached to them.
Mm-hmm.
So we don't have to use those words anymore. We don't have to go the traditional transformation approach. We don't have to have this huge agile transformation with pomp and circumstance. We can just do it kind of undercover, changing one behavior at a time. And eventually, if you plant enough seeds, it will sprout a beautiful garden.
I totally agree. And I think that's the shift that's coming. I've been talking with a lot of people in the industry. And I know you and I spoke briefly before this, and I see that as happening and starting to really happen in a bigger way this year. I'm starting to hear about some, for the first time ever, some Scrum Master roles not being called Scrum Master anymore, but being called Scrum Lead.
Oh, okay.
And maybe Team Coach, but I've heard officially Scrum Lead in at least one large organization already. So that's exciting to me, right? These are more changes that are happening. And to your point, I agree. I think it doesn't matter what we call it. It matters that we're helping improve the process.
Yep.
And making it better so that companies can really thrive.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, everything boils down to behavior change. Just making sure people are doing the right thing and they know why they're doing it.
Exactly. Let's talk. I want to get your thoughts on leadership. We've gotten a lot of feedback from our audience on leadership and just how valuable your unique leadership experience to get to where you are today. There's a lot there. If you were to boil it down to say 3 key tips that you want to share, what are 3 aspects of really effective leaders that you see from your experience that you would, our audience, our current and future leaders out there in the industry? So if you were to boil it down to 3 tips that you think are really important and valuable for leaders, what would those be?
Oh, that's a great question. So immediately trust comes to mind. So you have to build trust between you and your team and you and your peers, right? Without trust, it's going to be that much harder to get work done. And the way you build trust is you create psychological safety, right? How do you make it safe for people to experiment? How do you make it safe for people to innovate? How do you look at failure, right? If we look at failure as first attempt in learning, right, that creates a wildly different experience on your team than if every time somebody's reprimanded for making a mistake, right? So it's trust is the foundation upon which everything is built. And if you trust your team and your team trusts you, I think the second factor that is really important is empowerment. And empowerment comes from one, having a really strong vision, right? You are taking your team on a journey. There's some end point, there's a summit that you are all climbing. And what does that summit look like? What is it going to look like when we are done with all of these things? What does the future state look like? How are we going to get there? And the empowerment comes in setting the guardrails on how we're going to get there. It's not being prescriptive. It's not outlining every step. It's not micromanaging. It's trusting your team that they understand and are aligned to the vision because they trust you and you trust them. They understand the guardrails that you've put in place. And then innovation really comes from an experimentation with how do they wobble between those guardrails, right? And it might not be a straight path up that mountain. We might go around the mountain in a circular fashion a few times, but we're going to learn so much. We're going to do so many cool things together, which is really going to energize and engage the team. So we have trust, we have empowerment, and then the other piece is you got to have fun, right? You've got to have fun as a team. I think some of the best friendships I've made have been with people that I've worked with. There's a lot of chaos out there in the system. So, we're all in the trenches together and it's hard and it's horrible sometimes. But it's nice to just take a break and have a happy hour to really build that team morale, share some funny pictures, share a dumpster fire meme. That's my favorite one. Right? It's important to have fun and not take yourself too seriously. At the end of the day, a job is a job is a job, and we all have lives outside of work. So it's really important to recognize that.
Those are great tips. Trust, empowerment, and fun. You also talked about a lot of other key things in there, such as clarity of vision and setting, the guardrails for innovation and experimentation. I love that. Those are all really important aspects of a healthy organization, and especially, and as a leader, you want to think about all these things so that you can help, lead your team by example and really establish this. And I'm really glad that you shared fun as one of them as well, because I think when organizations tend to get stressed by the economy or by the market or whatever, the fun isn't really allowed or isn't really as comfortable. And a lot of senior leaders sometimes are like, why are you having fun? We should be working, right? We should be doing more. But I've seen that being very effective, the highest performing teams. Can you give an example or two? Like you mentioned happy hour. Can you give an example of two or some other examples of fun that you've seen be in the workplace and just really help people get more into a better state of trust and empowerment?
Yeah, I actually have two great examples come to mind. So one, when my team came over to me at VMware, there was about 30 people that came under my care, and I didn't really know very many of them. And it took us some time to get our wobbles out. So right around the holiday time, we decided to have a holiday show extravaganza or holiday talent show extravaganza. So we had a 2-hour meeting. It was a global team. So some people had to do it in the morning, unfortunately. But everybody on the team had an opportunity to showcase their talent, whether it was live, whether it was pre-recorded, and people just went nuts. We found out we had a woodworking expert, we had a professional singer, we had a DJ, we had a skateboarder. None of these things we would have known about each other if we didn't do this crazy extravaganza with just fun and fanfare and just lots of silliness. So that was a huge hit, and I saw such a change in the mood of the team. It really brought them closer together, and they stopped seeing me as, this big boss lady that looks over them, as, one of them. So that was really fun. And
That's
then
that's fantastic. And you have another example of
I
fun?
do. I do. This one is a little bit, it's a little bit less fun, but we had some attrition on the team, right? VMware was acquired by Broadcom, which led to some stress, and some folks chose to depart. And instead of having the traditional, farewell party where everybody joins the Zoom call and we all go around the horn saying what we'll miss about that person, and it's sad and depressing, and we decided to infuse it with some games. And we continued the spirit of getting to know each other, getting to know what this person is going to do on their next adventure, sharing songs, sharing pictures, sharing memes and gifs. And it was the same thing, right? We accomplished the same thing. We still told this person how much we'll miss them and what they meant to us, but we did it in a much more fun and lighthearted way to where it didn't feel heavy.
Such a great idea. Such a great idea. So you're bringing creativity and innovation even into the farewell events with people,
Yes.
which is beautiful. I've seen the talent show not done quite as large as of an extravaganza as you shared, but on a smaller size. And I've been just very impressed. I agree with you. It really brings people together. And I think these are some of the creative leadership behaviors that are really good to see in the workplace and that are shown by you and by other really effective leaders. And a lot of them aren't really in textbooks. This is like how do you, I call it like sitting under a tree. Like how do you sit under a tree and just think about what does your team need? What does your organization need right now? They need a little more fun. Maybe we should do this. Talent. Let's do a talent show. Nobody would ever predict that you would do that, but then you do it and you take a risk. Maybe it flops on the ground, but this one was fantastic. And I appreciate you sharing the examples because it really helps inspire more creativity and innovation in our listeners.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I know in the interest of time, we're gonna wind things down, Liliya. I really appreciate your time, your attention, and you sharing. And I have a little bit of background noise there. Apologize for that. It's probably the 7-year-old granddaughter who's being attacked by her father right now.
Oh, how fun.
But I really appreciate your time and your attention, energy, and your insights are fantastic. And it's amazing to see how your path of your career led you to here, and how everybody has their own unique way to become a really strong, effective leader in today's world. So thank you very much for your time.
Yeah, thank you so much for the opportunity to share my story and my point of view. Really appreciate it.